begin the Murphy bed platform, he takes a 4x8 sheet of 1/2 inch plywood and cuts it down to match the size of the mattress. Since the mattress measures 38.5 inches wide by 75 inches long, he measures and marks those dimensions carefully. Then, using a circular saw, he cuts the plywood square and precise. He mentions that it's okay to leave about 1/2 inch of extra space around the edges to fit sheets and blankets more easily, but the fit still needs to be snug so the bed can support itself when upright against the wall. Because he used an inexpensive piece of plywood, there are a few knots and gaps that need filling before painting. If he were planning to stain the wood, he'd use a stainable filler in a matching tone. But since he's going to paint it, he uses Bondo, a fast-hardening filler that sands smoothly like wood, to prepare the surface for finishing. Next, he starts working on the frame. He purchased 4 2x8 boards, each 8 feet long. He picks the 2 straightest boards to use for the long sides and begins by cutting the short sides first. The short sides match the width of the plywood platform, 38.5 inches. He marks and cuts those pieces. For the long sides, he adds the combined thickness of the 2 short boards, 1.5 inches each, to the 75-inch platform length, making the long boards 78 inches. This overlap adds strength to the frame's corners. To support the platform, he uses a glue block method with 2x2s. He cuts 2 75-inch long 2x2s to run along the long sides of the frame, and 2 shorter pieces at 35.5 inches for the ends. Before assembling, he does a drop fit to make sure everything lines up correctly. When attaching the glue blocks, he uses 2.5-inch number 8 screws and pre-drills the holes since the 2x2s are thin and could split. He places a screw every 6 inches and uses wood glue for extra hold. Because the mattress is 5 inches thick, and he wants about 1.5 inches to sit above the bed frame, he places the glue blocks 4 inches down from the top of the frame. To do this consistently, he makes a story stick, a small board marked with 2 lines spaced 4 inches apart. He uses this stick to mark all the boards and to ensure even spacing from the end. For the corners of the frame, he applies plenty of glue and uses large number 10 by 3-inch screws, since screwing into end grain is generally weaker. Once the frame is assembled, he test fits the plywood platform, runs glue along the edges, and secures it with a few brad nails, just enough to hold it in place while the glue dries. He also puts on safety glasses and hearing protection while working. And he sands the entire frame using 80 grit sandpaper and an orbital sander. He doesn't go too far, just enough to smooth the surface and edges so it's comfortable to the touch. Attach the bed to the wall. He cuts a board the same width as the bed platform and long enough to reach across 3 wall studs. He pre-drills holes and installs the hinges onto both the wall board and the bed frame before attaching anything vertically. It's much easier to drill and screw on the floor than on the wall. When it's time to mount everything, he secures the wall board in place, aligns the bed frame so the hinge holes match up, and asks someone to help hold the bed steady while he fastens the screws through the hinges. This ensures a secure and aligned installation. To hold the bed upright, he installs a simple gate latch. He attaches the latch to the upper corner of the bed frame, making sure it sticks out past the edge, and mounts the receiver onto the wall using a scrap piece of plywood. He uses strong drywall anchors and tries to hit at least 2 studs with the screws for stability. To determine how tall the feet need to be, he stacks scraps of wood under the corners of the bed until it sits level. He uses that measurement to cut support feet for the frame. Finally, he begins decorating the front of the bed, which will be visible when it's folded up. He's designing it to look like the TARDIS from Doctor Who. He lays out the design with masking tape to make sure the proportions look good. He uses 3/4 inch MDF trim to create door-like panels and a piece of plywood with a police box sign across the top. He temporarily tapes a printed TARDIS sign in place to check the spacing, then begins attaching the trim with glue and a brad nail. He measures and cuts additional trim pieces to fill in the rest of the panel, and even adds a thin half-round molding down the center to mimic the TARDIS doors. Before attaching the top sign, he paints it flat on the ground so it's easier to work with. Once the paint dries, he mounts it to the frame and finishes it with small details like the saint, John's ambulance sticker, and a couple of decorative door handles. Even though they don't open anything, they complete the look. The only thing left is the keyhole, which he'll add later. And that's it. The Murphy bed, now disguised as the TARDIS, is complete.